Welcome to Legends of Music. I'm your host, Norm Zadeh. I have with me a true legend of music, Lil Anthony of Lil Anthony and the Imperials.
Where is he? I'm going to get his autograph. Is he here? Oh, that's me.
Yes, right. The only person I often tell Lil Anthony because I love him and we talk not infrequently. When he calls me up, I always say, Anthony, there's only one person in the world that doesn't think you're a legend of music, and that's you. Okay. The most modest man you can imagine. Okay. But I'm going to say some nice things about you, Anthony, whether you like it or
I
not.
like nice things. Believe me, it's a very good thing to hear nice things. Especially
Okay. So, first of all, Lil Anthony, you probably know him as Lil Anthony of Lil Anthony and the Imperials. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's very hard to do, by the way, because correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Mariah Carey is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Am I correct?
A lot of people should be in there. Fifth Dimension is not in there. I never could figure that one out. They got like 7 Grammys.
I don't think Stylistics are in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, correct?
They might be. No, I don't know.
I don't think they are. Not the last time I checked. Or how about I forget her name now. Oh, forget about it. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston, I don't think is.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So it's not easy.
People not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like in the Baseball Hall of Fame and Football Hall of Fame. It's kind of strange. I'm not going to come down on them because there's so many people, but it is unusual for those kind of people not to be there. How did I get in there?
Well, you keep asking that question, but I think the answer is very clear. You're one of the best singers of all time. That's my opinion.
You know, you see my hair,
and your hair looks great. I mean, your hair looks fine.
Well, you see, I didn't do anything. You called me and I went.
Yeah, you're the only. Look, let's talk about hair for a second. I mean, how does my hair look, right?
I feel better, Norm. After seeing you, I feel much better now.
Exactly. So I put on my glasses that cover up the bags under my eyes, by the way.
I usually do, but when I came in, I ran and I forgot my glasses. I mean, these are my reading glasses. How about that?
I would take them off. I mean, you look marvelous with your glasses on, but so why is this man great? Okay, so let's talk about some of his songs, like "Hurt So Bad." Okay, what a song!
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Right? Tears on My Pillow. Okay, Two Kinds of People in the World.
Yep.
And I could go on and on because there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, you are a legend. Okay, let's find out a little bit more about this legend. By the way, his website is lilanthonyandtheimperials.org. Is that correct?
No, it's changed. It's I tell you, if you want to, I'll give you a link, and that will be the harmonystreet.biz.
What was that again?
Harmony, like harmony, you're singing harmony. Harmony.com.
Okay. All right.
Harmonystreet.biz. That's what I wrote.
Harmonystreet.biz.
That'll link you in because since the Imperial thing is being weaned out, we haven't got to all the things we need to, it's still the old stuff, and it's not about that now. It's about what I'm doing now.
Okay. So, by the way, why do people call you Little Anthony?
Oh, it's funny you should ask. No. It isn't because of my physical stature. I'm like 5'8.5", at least I used to be, but that's not considered little. Now you ask yourself, how did that happen? Well, I will tell you. Legend says that when they put out Tears on My Pillow, originally it was the Imperials, and they had to change it because at the time, Alan Freed, who was called the father of rock and roll, the guy that coined the phrase and the whole thing, he was the biggest thing in the world, in the United States of America, outside of Dick Clark. And he broadcast from New York City on WIN in New York City. And every kid after school would automatically turn on, he called it the big beat, rock and roll, the whole bit. And the record promoter, as I was told, took the record "Tears of My Pillow," my very first successful hit record, took it up to him, and I was 17. It took it up to him, and he, in those days, jockeys were king. They were king. You know, they would actually pick the records, like what to play. Today you got, you know, program directors, and now it's computerized, everything else. But then that jockey was the guy, and so they played it for him, and he said, "Whoa, that girl can sing." And the promoter said, "It's not a girl, it's a guy." He said, "A guy? Boy, with a voice like that, he must be awfully little." That's that's how it started. He started saying that on the radio. It blew up. They had to repackage all the original records that were out, the Imperials, to Little Anthony and the Imperials. And I was cut out of the herd. Now, I'm not unusual, Norm. Most singers that come out are front men or front ladies. That's usually how it's done. The Smokey Robinson was not Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. It was the Miracles. They cut him out of the herd. Became Smokey Robinson. Donna Ross, the Supremes, cut her out of the herd. It's now Donna Ross and the Supremes. As you well know, in some instances, not necessarily in mine, but a little bit, that could cause a little friction, especially when you're coming into a group that you're an ensemble, you're a group, and one for all for one kind of stuff. But there's no way any remarkable singer can be cut away. For instance, Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops. Everybody knew Levi's voice. He was like Levi. If you knew his name, you knew, but it wasn't called Levi and the Four Tops or the Three Tops. But what it was called, the Four Tops. And the reason why that was, Levi himself said, "No, these are my brothers. I don't want to change anything," because Motown wanted that to happen. Barry Gordy wanted to. He said, "Man, you're the guy. You're the one. You're the one that's happening here. People listen to your voice." No, I'm with the guys and with brothers, and they really were, sincerely. But that is not the rule. That's the exception. The only group I've heard that happened to.
So what's the normal split on, say, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles? I mean, does Smokey get, what percentage does Smokey get? What percentage do the other people get?
Generally, it's determined by the market itself. Usually promoters will do that. Or even in the after SAG union, the front man, the leader, always gets double. Okay. But at the time when you first start out, it's all for one and one for all. We were all equal. Once they cut me out of the herd, then life itself took on its own reality. And eventually, you know, they would say, no, he gets more money. He gets more money. And you know, that can cause friction with the other guys. But in fact, I think it's really fair in this respect, because that's the voice that people are locking into. You can get anybody to sing a background to anything. Not saying that my guys weren't one of the best at it, and they were. And so were the Miracles, and so were a lot of other groups. But there's something about that lead singer that the audience hears. They didn't say, "Ooh, ooh," where you hear "Tears of My Pillow," it opens up with the background, "Ooh, ooh, ooh." But the first verse that comes out is, "You don't remember me." Once that was established, that's it. You're going to get more money. Even if you try not to get it, you're going to get more money. Yeah.
Have you ever been frightened to go on a stage?
I still am. Are you kidding me? Scary out there. Telling people, for goodness sakes, I'm a human being. Yeah, I don't know of any artist in the world, I don't care if it's Luciano Pavarotti, I don't care if Sinatra. You know what Sinatra said? He said, people don't realize that it's lonely up here. And it is. It is. Even when I had the group as Imperials for writing me, I was the one that the audience is focused on. So, for instance, Ernest can get sick. Clarence can get sick. And it's okay. You could come out with three guys. Okay, as long as Little Anthony's here, or Smokey Robinson's here, or Donna Ross is there. But if I get sick, the show's canceled.
Yeah, that would make sense though, actually, because but Clarence had a really good voice, didn't he?
No, Clarence was not.
No?
He could sing. Don't get me wrong, obviously, but he was not a front man. He was not a lead voice. I mean, I don't care if it's orchestras. I don't care if it's symphonies. That's what in symphonies they have what you call the concert master. Why is he concert master? Because he's better than everybody else. That's all it is. There's a pilot in the plane, and then there's a co-pilot. Why is the pilot flying? Because he's better than the co-pilot. Eventually, the co-pilot can move over. But in the case of Clarence and people like Clarence, that was his voice. It's not going to change. And he was not considered a lead voice. The record people like George Golden or whoever may be out there, or the Clyde Davises, that's how they roll. They're about the audience hearing and being able to sell their product at the very best that they can sell it. So you can get other guys in the group, and I had a lot of things we did with Sammy Strain. We did recordings with him. We did recordings with Clarence, but that wasn't the thing that sold the record. What sold the record was Smokey's voice. It was my voice. It was Donna Ross's voice, and on and on and on.
Do you feel that the recording artists have been treated fairly by the industry, or do you think that they've been somewhat underpaid?
Oh, no. Everybody knows that. I mean, this, especially the cats that came out of my era, we call it the Stone Age of rock and roll. We set the standard for these young artists coming out now. And let me use a little bit of an analogy, Norm. They once asked Willie Mays, who's considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest ball player that ever played. He was the original 5-tool baseball player. And other than Babe Ruth was a home run hitter, but Babe Ruth was not a very good defensive player. Babe Ruth can pitch because he started as a pitcher, but he was not everything well. Willie Mays was everything. He can run, he can field, he can throw, right?
Right.
Well, at that time, in the 60s and 50s, the standard of living is a lot different than it is now. Because you can get, when we heard Willie Mays are getting $250,000 a year, we all, oh, that's so much money. 250, are you kidding me? They just signed Brandon Nimmo to the Mets. I'm a Met fan. $168 million for 8 years. So you see that it's in that era, that was a lot of money. Okay, so what we were doing in our era was a lot of money, and even to make a record in those days, I mean, you could have 52 musicians and everybody's in the studio and everything. The cost of that in those days, I used to hear they would say, "Man, oh, you know how much it costs to record that record?" Sometimes I hear the executives talking, record executives amongst each other. $75,000. Can you imagine that? Today, well, because we got technology now to get around that, but generally to do a radio ready record, as they call it, or an album, you're talking $200,000-300,000. You see, so we didn't get in those days. What little we wasn't getting, we weren't getting that because we didn't know about publishing. We didn't know. I mean, my parents, when we got together to sign the contract with Gordon and Records and George Goldner, they bought, we didn't know what lawyer to get, so they bought the family lawyer, real estate lawyer. Real estate lawyer doesn't know anything about music. He doesn't specialize in that. In fact, the lawyers today, that's an industry now. You know that, the recording industry, that's a specialized law thing. I mean, they got a special school for that now in colleges, just for that. He's a lawyer, a musical, what do they call it? A musical lawyer? I don't know, recording lawyer, I don't know what they call it. But they specialize in that. We didn't get the money because we didn't understand the rules. The record companies was not gonna educate
Give
us.
it to you.
Yeah. So we didn't know. So it was trial and error, trial and error. And I don't care who you are. In fact, you might have read many times about uh, uh, many of the great artists, man, that will say, I never got the money I was supposed to get, you know? Presley, he didn't get RCA. I'm not getting anybody mad over that at me, but the truth is, it's a known fact that he and his entourage, whoever they were, the entourage or the colonel, or whoever was dealing with him, they really didn't get the money they should have gotten, because what happened was technology began to come in, and now you got TV. All of a sudden, people say, "Oh, you should be paid for TV." Why? Because of your likeness, and anything that is you, or a picture, or whatever it is, you really should be paid for that. Well, a lot of people didn't know that. They would go on these TV shows, and TV shows were promoting and getting big, but they didn't get the money they were getting until the union came into play. When Screen Actors Guild started working with starting up after American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, that they began to represent the artists as properly as they could. So yes, Willie Mays at the time when he got $250,000, he was rich. Today he's not; he's poor. But that's why. It isn't because the industry itself did something mean and insidious against us. It just was a different era. Now, once they learned, the Jay-Z's and Snoop Dogg and everybody else's family, now they come in, went to sign a contract with these record companies with a bastard of lawyers. They have a team of lawyers coming in. They cover everything. Oh, we got to get it from internet. We got to get money with that. We got to get money with this. YouTube. Yeah. See? Now, here I am. I started out as a kid, 16, 15 years old, and now I'm 81. And I look back and I go, oh my goodness, by today's standard, I would have been somebody. I could have been champ. I could have been a contender.
Well, I think you are. Look, I mean, I really can't think, if somebody said to me, who do you prefer to listen to? I can't think of anybody. I can't.
Well, knowing you, as long as I've known you, yeah, you got a grasp. You don't understand. Let me try to tell you, and I understand you perfectly, and people and folks like you. When we recorded it with a system called Analog. Analog, if you listen to any of the old stuff from Napco to BB King, I don't care. It was something that was so pure, jumped at you. When stereo came, it was in your face. Today, the technology is so good, it's horrible in many ways. It's good, but bad, because it lost that authenticity to the sound coming in your radio. Remember in the cars, we used to have those 8 tracks, those big old things.
Sure.
And then you had the sounds come from every part of your car. Well, they've improved on that, but that was analog, going through the stereo system. Today, man, it goes through, I don't know what it goes through. It goes through all kinds of technical. By the time they ring that thing out, there's something missing. And the audience knows it. And the reason I can prove that, YouTube is the place where a lot of young people, and I'm talking about millennials, or what you want to call them, they go to YouTube and then they discover you. They're who? They hear that record, they go, wow, that was, whoa. They're hearing what the people at that time heard. They were not able with all this technology to make that better or even come near to what it was. So what was very simple was better. And I'm still broke.
By the way, please sit as far back in your chair as you can, Mr. Broke, because
you see my jacket, it keeps riding.
I love your outfit. You're gorgeous. I think you're a very attractive man, but you're more attractive when you sit back in your chair so the light, you can see your beautiful face. Okay? So don't lean into the
ladies and gentlemen, they don't hear me no more because I backed out of the room.
All right, this has been wonderful. Let's finish it with a couple of, tell me about some of your contemporaries, some good stories about, whether it's Smokey Robinson or Phil Spector or whoever it is. Let's hear a couple of good stories.
Well, they're numerous. I wouldn't even know where to start, except
Try to start somewhere.
Phil Spector was a character. All right. I've actually met Phil Spector for the first time. He had something to do with a shindig. There was a TV show on NBC, I believe, ABC, I can't remember. It came out every week. It was hugely successful, called Shindig. You remember that, Norm?
I do.
Yeah. When color was just coming on TV, and it was like, wow.
Good old days.
Yeah. So they were huge. And then but they were coming out of LA, and we were living in New York, so they had to bring us to LA, and they had to pre-record you. And just at that time, the 12 tracks or 8 tracks went into 12 tracks went into 24 tracks, and 34 tracks, and it got bigger and bigger, so they had to pre-record you. In other words, they learned that they can record an act anywhere in the world, and then take the track, bring it to wherever they want anywhere in the world, and add on whatever voice they want to add on, say mines. I got all the Imperials already recorded. All they got to do is open up that track, and I could sing on that track and lip sync it. But Shindig didn't want that. They wanted us to sing. So the background of the guys was actually pre-recorded. They were lip syncing. I was singing. See? So that's how that was. And I met this guy there who was involved in that. And I walked in the studio where they sent us to. And there was a young lady there. It was the first time I ever met her. Her name was Darlene Love. And she was with a group, a recording group, which really was the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, of the Crystals. The Crystals are a creation of Phil Spector. There were a lot of leads in the Crystals. But she was the original, all those hits you heard in 65, 66, and all that. That was Darlene Love. And really, they left, some of the original people left, and they became the Blossoms, which was the backup group to Elvis Presley. See, you see how that?
Right.
It just goes all over the place. I remember in Shindig, I looked at the orchestra, it was a huge orchestra, and this guy sitting there. When I realized years later who that was Glenn Campbell. He was the guitar player in the band. No one knew who he was. There was another guy, who was it? The actor who did the Three Amigos. What's his name?
Don't ask me any questions.
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, okay.
Yeah, he was in there playing a banjo. He played very well behind the Beach Boys that were on that show that day. I remember who was on that show, well, vaguely. Beach Boys, Aretha Franklin, us, a bunch of thousand other folks. Because it was one of them big spectaculars. And that's why I met Phil Spector. And the first time I met Phil Spector, I wanted to leave from being.
That's understandable, actually.
He was intense, dude. He was so intense, dude. I mean, I wasn't used to that. I'm used to work with the nice people like Teddy Randazzo, Don Costa, George Golden, Richard Barrett. Everybody's like, yay, let's do.
Yeah, a fun situation, right? Gun comes out, right?
Oh man, he was like so man. I said, whoa. I'm sure that we would have got, but what he did, he reinvented Ronnie of the Ronettes, and she became Mrs. Spector. Lost, believe me, that's another story. She's passed on now, but I used to talk to her. It was not a fun time for her. At least it's all the other people, and eventually we all know what happened to Phil Spector. He ends up killing this woman.
Right.
He ends up dying in prison.
Right. Sad story.
I wish I could have made it funnier, but that's one of them. Yeah. Smokey, I met Smokey. I was in N and Gone Records. We were at 1650 Broadway in New York, the 51st Street between 7th and 6th. No, between 7th and Broadway. Yeah.
You remember where you met him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. I was in there was when I walked in the office, the Chantels were there. Remember the Chantels? Maybe. Yeah,
Beautiful song, right?
beautiful. And Richard Barrett, who managed us, managed them, and he managed Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers.
Beautiful, great group.
So it's a lot of great people on that, and a young group, but they came just a year later. That was the Isley Brothers, but that is another story.
Another great group.
When I walked into the office, the girls were there, and I don't know why we were there. Something, do something. It had to be do with recordings, whatever. And this guy, a little fellow, was a little shorter than me, very dark skinned, and that was Pete Moore. That was one of the original Miracles, and the other guy was Smokey. I didn't know who he was, and he reminds me. That's when I met him. And then Pete Moore has passed on. He reminded me, yeah, man, we met you right there. And the other guy that was there was a man, unknown guy. You know, he has some moderate success. Barry Gordy. Who knew? Barry Gordy at that time was the stock writer or writing for Brunswick Records, and he broke some of Jackie Wilson's biggest hits.
I love Jackie Wilson too.
What a great performer he was, man. One of the greats. And New York was the hub in those days of the recording business, and so was Chicago, because Chicago turned out a lot of great singing groups, like the Moonglows and the Flamingos and all these people, you know. So that's how that was. And that's how I met Smokey. He wasn't Smokey yet. So when Pete would tell me that, I go, that was you guys? You know, we already had Tears in My Pillow out. We were the biggest thing in the world. And they told me that, man, they looked at me, oh my goodness, Little Anthony, oh my gosh, Little Anthony, Smokey Robinson. Then, to make a long story longer, that relationship began to grow over the years, you know, and then they left, as we all know, and they all went to Detroit because Barry wanted to do something on his, he didn't want to work for Nat Tanapole and that bunch at Brunswick anymore or something to that effect. He ends up going to Detroit, and his family, you know, for a few dollars, and Smokey's family, they just got together, and Smokey was a natural writer. You know, I used to remember backstage. I would go backstage and maybe go to Smokey's room, and Marvin, his guitar player, be in a chair like this. And he in there composing stuff. I didn't know that stuff ended up being in Hall of Fame. No. No. Curtis Mayfield of the Impressions asked me one day in the Howard Theater, wrong, Uptown Theater in Philadelphia. This is 1958, 59, 60, I don't know. He was backstage and he said, man, we need to write a song together. Who knew?
Wow.
I was told, oh, I hear you're a lyricist. You could rhyme, man. Hey, let's write a song together. Marvin, Smokey's guitar player, so always say that, man. We'd be in a hotel. Man, you need to come in the room, man. We do some stuff together, man. I go, no time for that, man. I got some chicks to find. I got no time for that trivial stuff. Who knew? You know?
One more story, and then I'm going to let you go.
What be
One
that?
more story.
What is that?
Give me one more story.
I don't know.
One more. Let's talk. I asked you about Billy Stewart. Quick story.
Oh, Billy, yeah, Billy.
I Do Love You, Sitting in the Park.
Yeah, he was, and summertime.
Right.
I thought that was brilliant, man. Everybody in the business, his peers said, that's bad, man, how you did that. And really, that was his signature when he did Summertime. That was his biggest record. Billy was a character like most cats in those days. Everybody was a character. I guess the most naive person in the world was me when I came into the business, because they knew I was naive, and so I had a lot of wonderful people looked out for me. Ruth Brown, Laverne Baker, Bo Diddley. They just felt sorry for me or something, and they kind of took me under their wing. All these great people, Red Fox, I'm dropping names. All these people have a great deal to do with who I am today because of what they interjected in me as a young man. They liked me. Hey man, do this. Hey man, and learn. Mom's baby told me, "You gotta learn, baby. You gotta learn how to exit. You gotta learn how to enter. If you ain't got that right, you can forget it." I go, okay. So Red Fox taught me comedy timing between beats. What makes something funny, and someone tell a joke, and everybody goes, and then another guy comes around and tells the same joke because he understands the formula.
Red Fox, wow.
Yeah. So there is an art form and a formula to all that stuff. And I've been told many times in interviews, you didn't ask me, but I have been asked in interviews, what's it feel like to know all those people? Now they're dead, they're gone. I said, oh, they may be dead physically, but they're alive in me. Because all of their formulas, everything that I learned from them, I use today. And that it took my career and extended it. I really believe that. Beyond where a lot of people wouldn't have gone that far. I had a Jimmy Merchant, it was one of the original teenagers, Frankie Lyman. We're Facebook friends, and he did something in there about why do fools fall in love, and he was part of writing that with Herman Santiago and Frankie Lyman. He said, and he put it in, I said, man, that was the beginning part of my history that really inspired me, hearing this young man who I just was like me, and I can find somebody like me, sing like me, look like, I was so in love with that guy. And we became friends later on, one of my best friends. But he said that about why do fools fall in love, and I said something just nice. And he sent back to me something that was so profound to me. He said, man, sir, sir, I can only wish that I had went as far as you did. My group has went as far as you did. That was the ultimate compliment to me as an artist, as a human being. It means a whole lot. Means not, probably nobody else could care less, but for me, that was confirmation of him saying, well done, man. Glad you got further than we did.
Anthony, this has been a wonderful interview. I'd actually like to do another one of you because you have so much to say. Not today.
Not today.
But is there anything you would like to add, like plug anything before we?
Yeah, well, I just did my an album. It is called an anthology. Actually, when the Imperials ended, just to name the Imperials, I was never Imperial. I was Little Anthony. They cut me away from the Imperials. I was a different entity, but people think no. And all the original cats weren't there anymore. I didn't have the allegiance, and the sound wasn't the same as I loved it. And I left, and I started, do what I want to do. My son and I planned it. Tony, who you talked to many times. We started playing, and then another man came into my life I'd known for years. His name is Mike Miller, and we just shooting the breeze. And an idea came up, and Mike said about how much he loved. Like a lot of times you talk about those songs that we did, they were commercially, artistically received, but they were never commercially received. They were like B-side, just in the album.
Wait a minute, you're not saying "Hurt So Bad" was a B-side song?
No, "Hurt So Bad" was an A-side.
Right, you're talking about some other songs.
I'm talking about songs that no one really did in the album, but nonetheless, they're some of the greatest songs I've ever done. And I had people around the country and my peers and say, "Man, you need to do something about that. That stuff I heard, you should have did that. You should have put that out." I said, "I can't put that. I'm not a record company." Now today, with the technology and the ways we can do things with YouTube and all the wonderful things that we got, I can now do that. And I realized that, and so we decided to do it. And I called it an anthology because it is really me telling everybody, trying to tell them the progression and how I evolved over the years to become from a 17-year-old little Anthony to an 81-year-old little Anthony. 17-year-old Anthony is like anybody when they're young, whether they be athletes or whoever they are. You can do things you possibly will never do when you get older because physically you change. And that's the same thing with singers. The unfortunate thing is a lot of my peers try to keep being something they can't be. But I understood that from all those wonderful people like Moms Maybe, how to extend my career. And so I went on, came up with that idea, they called it Little Anthony and the Music. And when I was trying to tell people it's about the music, I just interpret the music. So it's called Little Anthony Anthology, Little Anthony and the Music. And you can get that actually by going on Harmony, going to a link called harmonystreet.biz. Harmonystreet.biz. And you can pick up that there. You can look at the other links that I'm involved with, and it's on all the platforms, every one of them. And we also right now,
I've listened to it. It's fantastic, by the way.
yeah, I remember I told you, man, here's something to listen to. And those are stuff that was done with Teddy Randazzo's writing and Don Costa, who was Sinatra's man. Every one of those songs were, about 90% of them were all done with 40, 50, 6-piece orchestras. And those are the same musicians that Sinatra used and that Cole used. Same people. Don Costa was his arranger, so he arranged for us. He was the producer. That's the man I always looked up in the window and saw, tell me, hey, no, get that right there. And that's what I did. I had this opportunity to do it. And I spoke to the surviving person, Shelley Randazzo, Teddy's wife, and she owns all that music, obviously. She gave me her blessing, and I went on and Mike did all the grunt work and did it all together with people, my son doing, we worked together as a team. Brought on some other people. And then there was. And I said, I'm putting this out to let people know what you perceive that I was, I'm not. But here I am now. I consider myself to be a more technically better singer than I was when I was 17 and 18. I may not, like Hank Aaron said, you get to a point where you don't have to run as hard and run from under your cap and dive in the ball to get, just when you know where the ball is going, you can position yourself. And you look, that's what it is. You learn to transition into who you are now. I happen to be still a tenor. I can do high C's if I want to, but it's like, I don't live there anymore. I visit now and then. I don't live there no more. See, why? Well, that's kind of silly. I'm 81, not 17. And that's very hard for people to grasp. But if you're going to last, if I give any advice to any young people that might be hearing this, you are the person that can, as long as you study your music and learn your art and what you're doing, you learn as time goes on and you go on in this minefield called life, you should get better at your art. You will get better at it. But you got to really put on blinders. You can't listen to all the noise out there to tell you what you should be. Who are you? Who are you really? And that I understand who I am. And so now as an artist, and I tell people I'm having more fun now in 81 than I was when I had all those big hit records. Why? Because I can do what I want to do without anybody telling me. I just did the PBS special, and which is a jazz thing. People didn't know I'm involved with jazz. Well, I was raised with pop music and jazz. I started there, but no one knows that until they heard me sing with a big band orchestra and went, what? Well, yeah, there are a lot of artists like that. So I'll shut up and hold my peace.
Anthony, fantastic interview. I'm going to let you go, but I love you.
Yes, dude.
Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for being